Audit Elections USA. And as you know, there are many issues to address in election integrity. People here at the Democracy Convention have already been discussing important issues like campaign finance reform, fighting back against voter suppression, or repairing our gerrymandered districts. All of these are very important, but here at Audit Elections USA, we have one particular goal, and that is for publicly verifiable elections. I believe, and switch next slide.
What's your name?
My name is Sarah Jane, and I help volunteer here with Audit AZ and Audit Elections USA now. Audit AZ has been fighting for election integrity in Arizona for the past 13 years. We use education, investigation, and litigation. You might have noticed in that Democracy Convention pamphlet, we had the National Institute of Verifiable Elections. And that's because we were going to change our name. The reason is because we are launching a national state-by-state program for election transparency. And since the pamphlet has been printed, we changed our minds. Our initial audit stands for something. It's an acronym standing for Americans United for Democracy, Integrity, and Transparency in Elections. And as you can see from our mission statement, those are still the values that are fundamental to our work. Our featured speaker today is Bill Reisner. He has been a lawyer for the past 49 years. He has consistently been involved in political struggles in and out of the courtroom. He successfully represented the Pima County Democratic Party in a redistricting challenge in 1970, and he was hired by the Pima County Board of Supervisors as an expert advisor on election law. He has been a lawyer for the Pima County Democratic Party for 30 years. But to give Bill Reisner a proper and more personal introduction is John Roberts Brakey, and he's one of the founders of Audit AZ. He is an election integrity investigator, an election transparency activist, and specializes in electronic voting machines. Thank you, John.
Thank you. You know, I cannot say enough good things about this man who's getting ready to speak. He's been my mentor for 13 years, taking me down a very serious rabbit hole of how elections really work. And the investigative work that we've done and the cases that we've done, I've done probably about 7 or 8 cases with Bill. I've done about a dozen in Arizona. And this work is just extremely important. I think you're going to find this presentation very interesting about what can happen and how to change in the industry. But anyway, with any further ado, I want to give you Bill Reisner, my dear friend and mentor. Thank you, Bill, for being here.
Yeah, thanks. It is my pleasure to be here, and I hope that I can impart some experience and lessons that we've learned that could be helpful to other folks. The main part, I think, of the presentation ultimately will be John Brakey, who will be talking about how the software that is going to be used on the next election for probably most of the votes in the United States can be made, and citizens can do the advanced planning that's necessary and pushing to see that the votes are counted. So this isn't simply a discussion of the problems and vulnerabilities, which are critically important, but also we'll talk about the answers and to how we can correct and make what is absolutely the most important thing, which is that our votes are properly counted. You know, the several days here of this democracy convention, if you look through it, you know, you see so much that this issue is important, that issue is important, the problems we're facing in this country, whether it's the problems of the critical climate change, the inequalities, the racism, so forth and so on. All of those, and you know, I don't know if individuals may have differing opinions and say, well, this is really important and something else is more important than that, and this is more important than that. What our issue relates to is a central issue, of the fundamental issue, which is democracy. And if democracy is to work, our tool is voting. That's how we achieve any of the changes that we see are needed in all of those areas. As I suppose we all kind of know, the way it is currently in the United States in general is that what the people want doesn't mean a whole lot. You know, there have been surveys that talk about the public, like a single payer. Most of the people in the United States understand that that's the right thing to do. But it's what money wants that seems to prevail. And so rightly people are talking at this convention and talks about what can we do about money and other things like that. But if the votes aren't counted, then even then it doesn't matter. So the tool is voting. The tool is seeing that it's accurately counted, and that's the fundamental tool in the tool chest for everybody that's involved in any democratic things. I'm an attorney in Tucson and earn my living with other cases, definitely not election cases. Election law actually is, there are folks that are, let's say, specialists in it. And I don't think I am one. One of the problems of that really is that those people tend to be on a little club and get to know everybody else and stuff. But I've been handling cases for a long time in the election arena. And I started out as, I was probably 26 years old or something. I represented the Democratic Party. I mentioned in a redistricting case. I've represented a bunch of representatives, people that are groups on city council or board of supervisors and so forth. Because really, I think maybe there was no one else that was that interested, and I'm interested in politics. I'm interested in all these issues. I got out of school in 1968. That's the Democratic Convention, 68, Martin Luther King. We were in the fire at that point. Digress just a minute on the democracy issue, because my record is a lot Native American, so I tend to focus some on that. And when we look at democracy, this was something that was unknown in Europe. They had kings and queens. They had none of this stuff. So what the colonies learned about democracy, they learned from the Indians. They learned it from the Iroquois Confederacy. The Iroquois Confederacy was 5 Indian nations, that particular group, very powerful confederacy. They would enter into a treaty with, for instance, Massachusetts and New York. Their treaties, incidentally, would say, "We the people," which is where that phrase came from, that the Europeans, hey, that's nice, because in Europe it's always me the king, and then they were telling the colonists, look, you guys ought to get a confederation like we have, and we could just have one treaty between you and all our people. So our guys, Benjamin Franklin was an Indian agent. These guys understood what the democracy was like, and one of the unique things about the Iroquois Confederacy was it was a representative democracy where they from the Confederation of States, kind of modeled after what they had learned from the Haudenosaunee with their confederation. You know, if you look at those, kind of interesting to me, the Europeans didn't have words for this stuff. We had a speaker this morning who's the co-chair of the Progressive Caucus. Caucus is an Algonquian word, because they didn't have words for how you do democratic kind of stuff. But the rich people and the slave owners were very nervous about actual democracy. So our convention then was in Philadelphia, secretly put together the Constitution, whose main goal was to slow democracy down, to protect property rights. Ultimately, they came out with a document that had nothing to do with the rights of the people, so hence the Bill of Rights had to be created to get the people to accept it. I only mention that because there is an attitude sometimes that that democracy and our Constitution was dictated by beings in the heaven and arrived perfectly formed or something. It's a new thing that we all have to work at, and as we all know, that is the way that we solve the change that we make social decisions and so forth and so on. Now, in Pima County with the Democratic Party, it established a election integrity committee many years ago, and then a number of people started working on that. And of course, John Brakey was one of them. And one of the things that group did was to get the county to make a lot of changes to protect the election computer itself, getting rid of Wi-Fi, things like that. Then we were interested in looking at what had actually been going on with the computer. So a guy named Jim March Simpson now wrote a public record request that we gave to our county government, and they wouldn't give us the copy of the database, and we were going to have to sue them. We had a county convention of the Democratic Party of all the precinct committee people. We unanimously passed a resolution I wrote that was the Board of Supervisors said, hey, cooperate with the party, give us the database, and don't make us sue. And the Democrats run Pima County. So we have a majority of Democrats, and our Board of Supervisors runs the election. I don't know what the system is in other states. Maybe you have your Secretary of State or something, but our county board is the supervisor, and they refused, and we had to sue. And it was the darndest thing ever. I handled cases against insurance companies, powerful things like that. Never seen like it. They probably spent $1 million trying to keep us from getting the database. And while the struggle is going on, we're sitting around talking and saying, we don't understand. I mean, the computer experts in our groups, there should be nothing there that's secret. What's the problem? What's the problem? You wouldn't give it to us. Ultimately, to cut short, we ultimately prevailed, and they had to give it to us. They cleaned up the database a little bit. There was actually a study, the Attorney General had an outside group, and this outside expert said, yeah, there's some evidence here that could indicate there had been cheating, but gosh, it's so simple to hide the evidence. We're surprised that it's there. But what we decided that we said, you know, what they're probably hiding is there was an election for a 20-year road plan and a tax tax increase involving $2 billion over this plan. And this was a plan the public had essentially rejected the tax increase 4 times at a 60-40 basis, and suddenly it won 60-40. And so we're thinking, well, I guess that's it. They must have rigged that election. Then, lo and behold, it turned out that instead of destroying the ballots, they were still stored, and we have been putting a spotlight on the possibility that that election may have been played with and engineered to show it won. And so the county decided, well, it'll look bad if we destroy the ballots now, so let's go to court and ask the judge if we're supposed to destroy it. And of course the answer was totally certain. We have a statute in Arizona. In Arizona, you can't look at the ballots. You can't count paper ballots. You can do none of that stuff. And there's a law that says 6 months after that election, the ballot shall be destroyed and the box is not open. But I was able to get the executive committee of the Democratic Party to say, no, let's file an objection and tell the judge that there's substantial evidence that that election was fraudulent. We want the court to take control of the ballots, count them, and we want to institute changes that will prevent cheating in the future. And so we went to court, and then fortunately the Libertarian Party made a counterclaim, and the 2 of us were there. But we're in court, and it was a motion where the county was saying, you need to dismiss this case because it doesn't state a claim. And the judge says, you know, he says, I know voting is very important. So that's certainly the case. And he says, and I know for purposes of this motion that I have to take as true that that election was fraudulent. But he says, gosh, you can't come to court just because an election is fraudulent. That's not what courts are for. We have no jurisdiction to hear that. You should go to the legislature, go somewhere else. So so he dismissed the case. And then because Tucson is run by the growth industry that didn't want this case appealed because the election had been rigged on their behalf, they went in the back, lined up votes for the Democratic Party not to appeal. The insiders said, we're not appealing. Meanwhile, the Libertarians were in the case, and they asked me to represent them, and we proceeded. And the Court of Appeals says, of course, you can prove that they cheated and so forth. So we come back to court. We're in the second judge. Judge says, gosh, you know, I know I have to take it that you're right, that this election was rigged. But he says, you know, the most I can do is just tell them not to do it again, and just tell them to follow the law. So I'm dismissing the case. You know, in the course of that lawsuit, it was kind of mentioning they actually filed in writing with the court a statement saying, referring to that election as a discrete incident of historical wrongdoing. And so what they were telling the judge was, hey, here's a list of elections and no one's accused us of cheating since. And do you realize what the problems would be if this thing goes on? So one of the things I think that we clearly learned, and it's an important lesson for everyone, is that to see that the ballots are counted properly, the procedures are proper, it all must be done before the election. You virtually can't challenge an election afterwards. In my state, you can't, period. recounts. And we have a law that says the only recounts is if it's 0.1%, and then you recount them on the machines, and you must accept the answer of the second recount, and you can't look at the paper. You can contest an election, different from recount. You can contest an election if within 5 days of the canvass you file a complaint specifically listing what was wrong and why the outcome could have been different. And you can't get the data, you can't analyze the data, you can't do those things within 5 days. And I think if you follow what's going on in Georgia now with that Ossoff race and Karen Handel, they've got good lawyers, a good lawsuit, much better law in Georgia, but I don't think, I mean, it's, you're running upstream to try to challenge any election afterwards, which makes it so important to look at it beforehand. But the problem, of course, we face is that the machines have been built to cheat. That's absolutely the clear answer. It's not, you know, some people say, wow, we found a bug in the software, or maybe there's something in the software, but that software was built to cheat. When in our situation, they were using the GEM software that Diebold had, which had the ability as part of the data is also the audit log. So what we found, and we have sworn testimony in our county of our election guy at the end of the day making a CD, going home, taking it with him at home on his computer. Then he could go in, could make changes any way that he wanted, and then go back and delete on the log that you were made changes, come back in, put it in the computer. We had that testimony. We had testimony. These guys would always print every election summary reports, knowing how because there's a lot of advanced voting in Arizona, so they always know who's winning and losing beforehand. I mean, they did it so often they had a rubber stamp made so that they knew. It's phenomenal. So you have the machines are built to cheat. They have them. The judges, I've learned, are frankly opposed to democracy. It's startling. I can talk to a judge and talk about the rights of the people to vote, and boy, they start moving in the chairs. They get uncomfortable. You know, you sit there and talk about throwing somebody out of their house on Christmas Eve on contract. Oh, that's right. Contracts are important. So it's pretty amazing. But then they live in an autocratic system where someone at the top says black is white, and every judge in the country has to say yes, black is white. The Supreme Court said it was. We've learned that, and this was really this was surprising to me. I've learned that, for instance, the political party in Arizona, in terms of the executive directors, the key people, they don't care. I talked to the head of our state chairman about it. Here's what we're discovering about fraud, what's going on. Didn't really care. The next chairman would never even meet with us to talk about it. So when you see that now, you see how I don't know the answer, but you see that now with Pelosi and all these people. Why aren't they concerned? Why isn't the DNC concerned? I don't know, but you can see that they are. And what those people get concerned about is, lack of public confidence in things. We're concerned about lack of reality and verification, because there's major decisions that have to be made in our country, and these decisions must be made where you can be confident that that was the choice of the people. It's easier to make sacrifices when you know that that the game's an honest game. One of the interesting things about well, let me back up to one point. You know, when I said the machines are made to cheat, I absolutely think that is the case. But on a separate kind of side thing, they were marketed to the election officers and the kind of stuff for that ability, because one of the things that the election officers don't like in the various counties is warts. They like the numbers to come out right and stuff, so it looks good, whether it was rigged or not. They wanted everything to look good. And so they tell them, well, with this system, you can go in and make these changes and make it all come out and make your reports all look good and neat. And so that's a feature that they all like. Now that same feature, of course, can be used by those with a more malicious intent of rigging, the entire election. So I think there's kind of a double side to it. The software that John will be talking about, and I don't want to take this part, but when it was first put on the market by ES&S, apparently they told the election officials about how the software could be used and verified that the vote totals were accurate. And they weren't selling the software. These guys didn't want to, oh, I'm not sure we want to buy that. So they took that out of the sales material. They left it in the software, but they took it out of the sales material. And so luckily in Tucson, one of the guys that's worked on election stuff, Dr. Tom Ryan, found out about this, talked to the guy that wrote the software. John Brinke found out, and it contains within that system the ability to verify. Now we've had to go part of the way in Pima County to do our stuff. I take it you'll be talking about the necessity to actually put ink in the machines.
That's right.
And do all the things, because you can believe that there are so many little county election city folks all over that really doesn't want the public to understand how they can press and how the votes can absolutely be verified as being accurate. And that's the thing I'd hope you pay most attention to today. I expect you pretty much knew what I'm talking about when I say it's built to cheat and they don't care and so forth. But I think it's kind of useful to have that common base and then try to get the details.
Thank you.
I'm just going to go with you guys. I'll go over just a couple of slides and then turn it over to John. Thank you. So in your brochures in front of you, it goes into a little more detail, but the goal of Audit Elections USA is to fix the problem that's known as black box voting. And let's see. And these lists up here are the problems, and we'll go into them in a little more detail. For one, policies on voting are decided by each state, municipality, in some cases individual counties. They run their elections by their own rules, and they buy their own voting equipment. And then these voting equipment. While Russian hackers get the headlines right now, the truth is our elections are vulnerable to illegal manipulation just by the vendors, the programmers, and the insiders that are already running our elections. They can use memory card viruses and other security breaches. And this Princeton professor, who had the quote on the wall, that said that the machines Americans use at the polls are less secure than the iPhones they're using to get there. And I'm going to jump into one more other quote, because very important, and this person is from Mr. Braun. He is an expert in cybersecurity. He served in the Obama administration as the director to the White House and the public liaison for the Department of Homeland Security. And he was an organizer of the voting village that happened in Las Vegas, the DEF CON voting village that happened in Las Vegas last weekend. And he said that anyone who says they're unhackable, referring to the voting machines, is either a fool or a liar. And luckily, John Brakey was actually there himself at Las Vegas, so I'm going to let him get into it.
Thank you, Sarah. It was an incredible event to be in Las Vegas, to actually see the hacks go down. I'm telling you, these young people, well, I'm 63, so if you're under that, you're young, okay? But in their 30s and 40s, came in, and they were in these machines so quickly, it was incredible. And it really emboldened the scientists who got up and gave speeches, and I want you to know I recorded all of them, and I have them online. And to see these people stand up and to really, to get them to talk about that this system, that the Help America Vote Act that passed in 2002 was a sham. We called it the Hack America Vote Act is what we wound up calling it. They spent $4 billion, but only half the $4 billion, $2 billion, was spent on voting machines. The other $2 billion was spent on statewide databases, which I'm not going to go into, but it's a very severe problem. In the last election cycle, the voter databases were used to disenfranchise and micro-target people. I'm not going to go too much more other than that. I want to get back onto the machines. But one of the things, and I do elections all over the country, I talk to people. I may not be in Georgia, working with people in Georgia, but I'm on the phone with them and talking to them because it was a D-bolt system. It was the TS, which had no paper at all. And I want you to know in that election that the vote by mail was 10.75%. The Democratic candidate won that 64%. The paperless, he lost on, and there's no way of proving it. And I want you to know it violated the rule of large numbers. And when I talk about the rule of large numbers, is that your vote by mail is here and your precinct, and you come together and they average out. But not in an election like in Arizona, where Bernie Sanders, and I sued the whole state on this one, they suppressed 150,000 people, and Hillary Clinton wins the vote by mail by 60%, and Bernie Sanders wins the precinct vote by 59%. That's a 39% split. There's something wrong there. Now, of course, in my state, Arizona, the vote by mail is not sorted by precinct. And if you're going to steal with impunity, you're going to steal where you know that you can get away with it. Because what is impunity? Impunity means you're not going to get prosecuted. You're not going to get caught. That is a real problem. I think that one of the things that this slide right up here right now is a logic and accuracy test being done. And we have a good friend, Mickey Donahoe, who's worked with us since the very beginning. He's retired from NSA, and he's a specialist in cryptology and hacking. He's NSA, okay, He says, and it's so true, that a logic and accuracy test, which they do before and after election, proves that the machinery is working at that moment. Now, how can I illustrate that more? Volkswagen. My God, they built 600,000 engines, cars to sell in the United States. And every time they went into an emission to get it tested, the computer knew it was being tested. And it passed. It only cost them $2.8 billion in fines, and probably the company is still in jeopardy because of this, because worldwide, but they built a computer to cheat and to be able to get the timing changed to make the car more peppy. Because if you put it in the right timing to burn all the fumes, you would have a dog car. You step on the pedal, it would bog. You buy a flat screen TV. The flat screen says, hey, I'm 5-star energy efficient. Well, when you plug the tester in, the screen goes dim. Security through obscurity. My God, what does that mean? Don't tell nobody how bad it is. Jesus, everybody knew. Fight the records request. When the Help America Vote Act passed and they spent $2 billion on all these machines, they were never tested for security. How do you like that, huh? They didn't pass the security mechanism till late 2005. That is how pathetic the situation with voting in this country is. This is exciting to me when I found this quote. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a model that makes the existing model obsolete. Ballot images change that model. And that's why they're hiding or destroying them. Bob Petrakis, good friend of mine in Ohio, Ohio Free Press, I don't know if you've heard him before or not, has been fighting ever since 2004 for election integrity. By the way, I'm no longer an election integrity activist. I've become a transparency activist because I know the system has very little integrity. I am for the solution. The solution is transparency. This is the DS850 in the corner there. That is the DS200. By the way, I was in Wisconsin for 3 weeks. I took 2 teams up there. I want you to know in that DS200, the FBI director before the election said, people of the United States, I want you to be very confident that our systems are not connected to the internet. That was a lie. It was a big lie. In Milwaukee, in Waukesha, and other counties that refused to hand count, we found that they had SIM cards built into them. Most election fraud is not done by outsiders, it's done by insiders. In our system, what is happening is their vendors are running it. You have vendors who are programming your computer. They're mailing out, they're printing your ballot, they're mailing out your ballot, they're receiving your ballot in some states, especially in California, large areas, because I did California too. I can tell you story after story of different states where I found that the vote by mail is being played with, okay? You know, in California, they have these machines that you run your ballot through when they come back in, and they sort them, and then they take a picture of your signature. And then they have a machine that will go ahead and verify. And if the machine says, oh, I can't verify that, we'll set it up and have it eyeballed. Well, somebody's going to verify a signature that could be a picture of a picture. And what I mean by a picture is you move from California to, let's say, New York. Hey, I know you're gone because we have these statewide databases, and when you move to New York to register, they're going to contact California to verify, and they're going to know you're gone. Some vendor can say, well, I got her signature on file. By the way, in Illinois, Bev Harris tells me that whoever those people who broke into the databases were stealing signatures is what they were stealing, okay? And, you know, I'm not one of those who are going to say the Russians did it. I am a conspiracy factualist. I deal in facts, and I have not seen any facts. And I've watched everything I can and studied to find out, show me the proof that the Russians did it. Because I know that most fraud is done by insiders. Ballot images, and the solution that we're talking about, and that's a very important part. Ballot images could be put online by precinct. You could go ahead and download an app, and you could download your precinct images with a cast vote record, and you could go ahead and check it certain ways. But believe it or not, you could go ahead and take one image, program your app, and then you could watch your computer count it, or just count it, and you're going to count everything. And it's an important part of the procedure because we need elections that are transparent, trackable, and publicly verified. Not this hocus pocus stuff that they're pulling on us. And you know, like I said, if an election director tells me again, well, I know my system's working really good because I ran a logic and accuracy test, I want to scream at him and say, what are you, crazy? You know, we know that game. And so, you know, that is part of the fight, is the solution. And I want you to know, I'm not making this up. What you're looking at on the screen right now is part of a proposal from San Francisco to ES&S and saying, could we, since your system produces ballot images, could we take them and put them online and that people could go ahead and count them at their own home? That is a solution. You know, the cheese has moved, and we have to look at different ways to do things. And of course, I would say it's very important that these images are pegged against the original ballots themselves. And that means, like Bill said, that, and by the way, Bill offered Pima County he'd buy a case of inkjets because in our county, they were destroying the images. We had to sue them. And you know, my judge very well and clearly asked a question. I'm going to tell you what he said. He turned around and asked Pima County. He said, Pima County, well, you know, I'm not computer literate, so I'm going to do it my way, but I'm going to ask you a question. If you take voted ballots and then you make photocopies of those voted ballots, and then you use the photocopies to count, what makes you think you can destroy them? He ruled from the bench for us, right there. I've done a dozen cases. I'm a paralegal, okay? I work with great lawyers like Bill. I never had a judge do that before because it is in the chain of custody. It is a violation. The megasecond these records were produced, they became a public record. What'd they say? Oh, gee, what would we save them for? We got the originals. But you can't get at the originals because they're afraid of election chicanery. They're afraid you have a piece of lead below your finger and you might make a mark on them. And in our state, you have to prove fraud before you get at them. And if you do get a recount, we'll give you a machine recount. It's like going to an ATM machine and asking for the receipt twice. We have a loophole. We have a chance not to have to pass legislation. We don't want to do that. I've tried that. You know, you get a bill into the House or the Senate, state-wise, and then some chairman will say, well, I don't want this being heard. I'm special interest, and puts it in a drawer. It's dead. But you know what? We do have a friend, and I call him Mr. Mandamus, the Mandamus Act. And basically, what the Mandamus is the records request law. And the law says you shall get these things. And if you don't get them, you sue them. And if you prevail, they have to pay your attorney fees. Not a bad deal. In fact, I bought a truck off one suit that we hit him on, okay? And we've had pretty good success. And that's what I'm encouraging is the kind of activism that we do it up front and we go ahead and make a move. And so basically, you know, if we don't wind up doing these things, we're going to be in very severe trouble. So anyway, the only other thing, I guess, is this we're going to go into. I'm honored to have this thing called the Breaky method. I didn't name it. Bev Harris did. Everybody knew Bev Harris, the black box voting is? She says the Breaky method puts the brakes on election fraud because we take away their impunity. I'm honored that she named that. This is nothing I invented. I take no credit except I've been advocating this probably for 10 years. We tried to get Pima County the D-bolt system. I said, well, I'll tell you what, can we bring a machine in and after you run your ballots, we can run the same thing. We could have the images. And the reason I knew that is because when Jim March came in, you know, in the very beginning, because when I fell down the rabbit hole of election fraud, I found a crime. I figured it out after 1,000 hours, and I said, but you know, I'm not a geek, and so I brought the best geek in the country, and then we sat down and talked, and I said, gee, how do we fix this system? Because nothing's fixed till you know why it broke. And he says, well, Harry Hursty, who is the man who was in the movie Hacking Democracy, I don't know if you saw it or not, where they use the memory cards and they pre-stuff. He says, you know, he says, realistically, we should have machinery that actually makes images of ballots, and then you could take those images and use those as public records, and you could verify elections. Well, it finally happened, and I'll have to say, it happened in Humboldt County first, 10 years ago, and then other people jumped in, and because of competition, I mean, it still works, a little bit of capitalism. Somebody has a better mousetrap, the other one's getting into it, and plus, the old mark sensor technology went extinct. Thank God it did. You know, IBM was built on it. So the point is that the big thing is item 2, that they need to peg the ballot images against the actual ballot. They both have a unique number. They come together. These machines weren't invented by election people. The 850 was a banker's machine out of Germany that they wanted to track documents. And they wanted to protect the original and give you a certified copy. And if court they had to produce the original, they could. That was the purpose. And so basically, that kind of a plus is just really important. Other than that, here is our information right here for contact. We're encouraging people all over the country to go ahead and take a good look. If you don't have these machines, you want to advocate for them. You want to make sure they produce a ballot image. You want to make sure that they have a machine that has an inkjet in it that will marry one ballot to the other because you want them married. And if we do that, then we might be able to decorrupt our system.
What kind of machines are those?
This is the ES&S 850, but I want you to know all of them have it. Dominion uses the Canon scanner, okay? Dominion, by the way, the names, First up, I want you to know all of these voting companies have STDs. Software transmitted disease. Okay, you got the wrong idea over there. I can tell now. Software transmitted. They've all been in bed with each other. You know, when you look at Diebold, it was originally Global, which is a scandal. You know, if you have my sheet and you download a paper, it's 24 pages long, it will give you history. It's 105 links to really get a good comprehensive idea of how bad this thing really is. Bill?
Yeah, John, why don't you explain how the high-speed scanner works and how it puts that number on the
Okay, I'd be
ballot?
glad to. And
What you're looking at on the screen is the new ES&S DS850 that I filmed in Waukesha, Wisconsin during the Stein recount December of 2016. These digital scanners count about 300 ballots per minute. As the ballots go through the DS850, it takes a picture of both sides of the ballot. If the ballot image made is readable by using optical character recognition software known as OCR, and if it successfully lifts the data and it places the OCR data in a cast vote record known as CVR. Once that's done, it will place a serialized number to the ballot image file. If there is an ink cartridge installed and turned on, the 850 will put a serialized number sprayed onto the original ballot itself. Both numbers are reconciled in the ballot table. If a ballot image fails to be read properly, it will cycle the ballot to the upper bin, indicating that the ballot needs to be inspected, and if okay, it's run again. All of this is done in 1/5 of a second per ballot. By the presidential election of 2020, 85% of the country most likely will have a similar digital voting system. We are now about 40% nationally.
that is the machine right there. They're used all over the country. ES&S now controls about 60% of the market in the United States. Dominion is declined. They're out of Canada. Dominion is the old Diebold. But just how bad it is, like I said, Global, then Diebold bought them, and then Diebold made their money and did what they did. And then they got a bad reputation because they left their files open, and Bev Harris was able to download gigabytes and gigabytes of information, and she got the Holy Grail and found out how crooked the whole deal was. Okay? And I worked closely with Bev Harris. I was part of, ever heard Magic Fraction? Fraction Magic?
Yep.
It's hideous. You know, I ran it 2 years ago. I went to get with Bev and Mimi Kennedy and others, and a remarkable young man out of Memphis, Tennessee, where black people were voting, and they were voting at 3/5 of a person. They were always electing white prosecutors in Memphis, Tennessee, as the story goes, okay? And they would go ahead and weigh your vote, and they had it tied to the voter database. The 850, 300 ballots a minute, as the ballots go right through the machine, it takes an image. If the image is good, it will take it and put a number on the ballot, and then also put a number uniquely on the image file, and put it as a PDF, because that way you have the front and back, okay? And if there's an error, it will take it and cycle it to the top bin. If there's a write-in, if you want to circulate one out, you could put it into a different bin, okay? And thus you have a document that's married to each other, because, you know, I do once again want to say that it is important that images could be manipulated, okay? And that's why when I talk about this system working, I'm talking about hand-marked paper ballots. Of course, you know, there's another habit coming. It'll probably be before 2020, okay? And they'll probably try selling us machines that produce an image, but it will also mark the ballot. And if they do something like that, that's craziness, because in a precinct you need 6 to 8 of those. And what are they? They're $6,000 pencils. Okay? No, we want hand-marked paper ballots. We want them where they can be put online, that we can see how people marked them, and then turn right around and then verify them. And because, like I said, elections must be transparent, trackable, and publicly verified. Anything less than that is unacceptable. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask the
Actually do the
questions.
verification
Yeah?
of the copies, how would a John Q. public verify this? Does they have to buy software to download this?
The software is being developed, and you probably can be able to buy it on a site for, like, if we give it away, then you can download it for $1.69. And it's just an app,
Right.
and it's to do one precinct at a time. And if you had to download more, you could have to buy another program to sort all the images out, because each image has the ballot precinct on a barcode, and that's how they do it in their computer systems. So that is what we're proposing to have happen. 85% of the country by 2020 will have this.
The ESS?
All of them.
What?
All the companies will have images.
So how much is that machine?
Oh my God, that one right there is $116,000. It's incredible, huh?
You're not gonna get,
That's only for vote by mail. It does 300. This one right here probably is, I think, between 6,000 to 8,000. They're all, hey, you can hand count and do better.
I think what he's getting at is that we won't be able to convince the election departments to change their machines, but luckily John can explain why they already are.
Oh, they have to. They can't get parts from anymore. Do you own a computer that's 20 years old?
Oh, right.
And I want you to know that the computer that they sold to the Help America Vote Act was computers that were 10 years older than that. You know what I'm saying? Because they really tried hard to stick with the Mark Sense technology. They did not want to leave a trail behind. And that's not in every state. I think this state is one of the better states when it comes to audits. Mark Helveson has done a hell of a job in this state, and has done studies in other states. But there are states that have severe problems. Go ahead.
So I'm from Michigan,
Yeah.
and
Oh, bad state. I'm sorry
yeah,
for it.
I don't know if you heard this or not, but we got new voting machines this year because of
Oh,
our,
we did.
because of the recount, the partial recount,
Yeah.
which revealed many flaws in the system. Then automatically just, we're getting new machines. The public
Yeah.
had no input whatsoever. Like, it was just decided. They're coming in for this August primary, like on Tuesday. I attended an election workshop in Detroit hosted by the Green Party, and they had someone come and talk about how they're gonna work, right? And so I raised my hand and said, but are they connected to the internet? And she said, no, we use a Wi-Fi connection that
That's
sends
the
sends it to a website.
That's the internet.
Like, is the
They lie.
website not?
They
I know,
lie.
like, I'm like,
It's
we got three
it's
different types of
insiders.
machines
It's
coming in now.
insiders, okay? And now you have one insider has the ability to go in and launch a virus.
She wanted to blame it on poll workers not checking the second bin for write-in ballots.
They
all
always
those
blame the poll
unrecountable
workers.
precincts in Detroit,
Yeah.
where Hillary got 95% of
Yeah.
the vote.
You know what kind of new machines that you guys want to get in?
I don't remember offhand.
Because
But
usually
it's
by
by
the end of the
county.
month we'll have an update through verified voting. They come out usually in August.
Most of them went with there was 2 or 3 different kinds that each county got to pick which kind they wanted. So,
Mhm.
there's a couple different kinds
Yeah.
being rolled out,
Yeah. Well, they're all going to be, if they're paper ballot based, we'll have images. And I would
Yeah.
encourage you to
They
go
are
ahead
still
and
paper
get with us.
ballots.
We'll send you a records request, help you mold what we did, and then you'll have to move it to your law in your state, your records request, and have it modified or whatever. I'll be honest with you, we are talking to people about possibly going into 15 states and working. We are talking about a grant with some people, and I'll say this, is that if this grant was to come through, I'm planning to hire 3 people in each state, and I'm going to teach them how to be good social justice gadflies. That's what I am. And what I teach is very simple. I teach that it's very important that we know the 7 C's: character, capacity, credibility, civility. I can call you a bad name real nice, And I use my citizenship. That's my rights. I love my country. But the most important C? Courage. But before you make that leap, I tell people, think something real simple. What kind of a character has the capacity to do what I'm going to do next? I've been arrested 5 times.
Nice.
I never lost my civility. I stood my ground, and I won every one of them. And I'm proud of that. And I think that we all have to have courage. I think Bill turned me onto a book. And this book, please come up, Bill. I mean, you know, I want you to talk about this book because it
Well-
really made a big impression on me. Please.
Later, I'm gonna be.
Yeah.
What she said
Yeah.
was Naomi Klein's book. No, it's not enough.
Yeah.
It's very good. But what I want you to clarify a couple things.
Yes, sir.
Because what the software that John's talking about that exists, the elections department intentionally subverts the ability of it. So, for instance, tell them what they were doing in Pima County with the images and that image transfer.
They were destroying it.
Yeah, so they
They were destroying it.
when they had the images
Yeah.
and they counted.
Oh yeah, the temporary memory, and they were. You know, I was asked not to sue right away. Okay, Tom Ryan's a great guy, and he said, "Gee, John, you know, he's a professor and very distinguished, and I'm an activist. You know, it's like oil and water mixing together. Sometimes they don't mix too good, but we work very well together." And he says, "Please don't. Let me see what I can do." And so I said, "Okay." So I held back 3 elections, and I finally said, "Okay, Tom, I'm gonna file for him." And I filed for them. They wrote me back and they said, "We don't have any images." And I go, "What?" In fact, how I found out about it is I first had to listen to like 12 hours or 15 hours of tapes because the election integrity committee, and at the last 15 minutes of the tape, one guy slipped. He says, "Yeah, we were destroying it because we didn't want people thinking that we were peeking and cheating," you know, which was just a tremendous farce. And so immediately I got with Bill, and then Bill helped me find another lawyer because he's extremely busy on some very important cases about civil rights on the border, and they were destroying it. And so we went to court. We won the case to get them preserved, but they went ahead and went to the legislators and did a strike-all bill, real sneaky. You know, Mark Twain was right. You know, we didn't even get the chance to watch the sausage. It looked like a very innocuous bill, and in that 24-page document, goes deeply into it. But they were destroying them, and we've now got them protected, and now we're getting ready to file in an outer lining county through a political party. Because, you know, in every state, there's 3 kinds of oversight of elections, and that's something you have to take a look at. You know, in my state, it's political parties are the fiduciary part of the responsibility, because we're on the West. You know, the East Coast, you didn't have political parties when the Constitution was formed. The second time of oversight is like New Mexico. That's citizens, you know, candidates' right is what it is. You're a candidate, you have the right to challenge, ask for a recount or whatever. And the third type of oversight is citizen oversight. I prefer citizen oversight because the other 2 first suck. You know why they suck? Because they're too political. That's what happened to us in the court case. Good, Bill?
Okay, so as John mentioned, the first thing you had to do when we got the court order in Pima County was to save the images.
Yeah.
Because they would destroy them. The next thing is, as he mentioned, is that machine has the ability to put a unique number on it. In Pima County, they don't put ink in the machine.
They pulled the inkjet out.
So when he said before I've offered, I'll buy you the ink, you know, they must do that. And then if they do that, if you have the ballots with the numbers on them, then you have the ability to do a random check to go back and say in box number, let's see if this number's for this candidate, to absolutely verify it through that system, or the dream is to make it available so everybody can verify. So for the elections, you need to check with whatever your local group is that's using this stuff to make sure that the capabilities are utilized to verify it. That's what we're pushing for.
Nationally, everywhere. Because the elections are that important. You know, I'm a grandfather, and it really concerns me, and I think all of us. And that's where, you know, the book that he was talking about is we got to make the leap. We got to get aggressive. We got to go ahead and do something. Go ahead.
So I'm in Minnesota, and I was an election judge last year, and I was pretty impressed with how things were done there. I felt very comfortable and confident about it. But what are the questions that people in states that don't have a good system like that, what questions do you ask your elections officials so that you can verify that this is not going on? I mean, it seems pretty complicated. So, I mean, it's not enough to ask what machine are you using. So if you're not using a paper ballot,
Yeah.
if you're not marking a paper ballot,
Right.
then that's bad.
That's bad.
Correct? Okay. And, of course, we're fed it in and it was spit out if there was a problem, and you'd be able to correct it, so that's a
right.
good thing.
Yeah.
And then, at the end of the day, the machines, after we balanced, the machines were taken somewhere to be plugged in and counted.
That's right.
So that's right. So.
Well, it depends how they handle it. I mean, I know in Pima County with our machines, because we knew of the memory cards and we know how dangerous they were being changed or a virus being loaded, that we would have to bring the whole machine in now, and it was a special seal put on it. If it was violated, it would be isolated and then run into another machine to check for a virus, because we know that if you can infect one card, you can infect the whole thing. I mean, that's an obvious problem.
So basically, as a voter, even though all those things are in place and I felt comfortable, there's really no way to know whether
The
or
only
not.
really way to know is to get it to paper. And really?
So you'd have to actually just recount everything on the images to make sure that
And
that
then go
the
back
memory
and
card was
verify
proper
off
and
the
other
originals.
stuff.
Yes, I mean, that's a very, very important part, because all of this can be gamed. And I've gone way back, talked to experts who talked about the Greeks and how they had the white rocks and the black rocks, and somebody was cheating there too. I mean, it's just the nature of this beast. There's a video on that 24, and it's an 8-minute video, and it gives you the history of voting. And it just really shows you how far we've gone astray from way the system should work. There's just a bad part of our nature of some people to game the system, okay? That they're smarter than somebody else, like a Chuck Huckleberry would think in Pima County, that he knows better. And those are a huge part of the problem, and it has to stop.
So then in the states where, I think it's Oregon, where they actually just vote mail-in
mail.
paper ballots, is
Yeah.
that
I'm not moving to Oregon. And I'll tell you, the state of Washington's
2
even
weeks
worse.
ahead of the letter, you don't get the results?
Vote by mail is a disaster.
Yeah,
So
for
that's
us.
people think that vote by mail means they're more secure. I've seen them.
That's
I'm
right.
like, no, because then, you're going to trust the post office? Like, I don't
No,
know.
I'm not worried about the post office.
I mean-
I'm worried about the vendors again. I'm
And then
worried
you
about
don't even
them.
know. Like, you don't
Yeah.
even see
You
it
don't
even
know
being
where it
put into a
gets.
machine. You have no idea if it was even counted.
Yeah.
You just put it in the mailbox.
We
and,
need to
you know,
run our own
that
elections,
face-to-face
we the
voting, you
people,
know?
okay? And that's what we have to have.
What about internet? What about the move to vote on the internet?
Insanity.
Hmm.
What percentage of the vote is by mail?
And every state's different. It's something that started in Oregon. It's moved. The farther east you get, the lesser it gets. Okay, and it's catching on, and it's a very dangerous part of the whole process. And we've seen that danger happen in Arizona. When I first started, 15% of our vote was vote by mail, absentee. Now it's 80 to 85%. And I can see the numbers switching, and there's no way that we can verify until we can get to the images. I've not got to the images yet, but I've gotten to the cast vote record. The databases between the old system and the new system, the old system of Mark Sense was really a Microsoft Access database. And by the way, you can open it up in Microsoft Access, okay? That's how bad it was. And you can change anything you want. The new system is a cast vote record. And it's probably, it could be in an Excel, but there's one magic thing to it. It could have the image right there with a hyperlink, and you click on it, and there's the image to verify, okay? And one row is everything on the ballot. And a primary could start with column A and end at HH, because we have 400 precincts, and then you got 4 different parties. I mean, you can see how many ballot styles that you have. But it's the first time that I could sort and see. Our logic, we have a Mickey Mouse audit law, and they will take the vote by mail, they'll stop the machine, grab 200 ballots, and there's 400 precincts, you could have one ballot of each, and they say, here's the number, and you can check it. But what are you checking that number against? Precincts is the historical data, or it could be a congressional district you're looking at. You see the history of that, okay? But we're seeing swings that are really incredible in our state, and I've seen it in other states. California, wow, I could not believe what the heck happened in their primary, okay? Election night, I was over in California before, they asked me if I would canvass with them and do this, so I did all my, screenshots, and I go, oh my God, Hillary's killing Bernie, she's winning by 26 points, I opened a bottle of wine, I went to sleep, and next morning it was only 13 and I knew something was wrong. okay? Then I checked and I found out that at the precinct level, Bernie lost it only by 2%, but they pushed 500,000 people into provisional ballots because they micro-targeted them. 1 million people in California went to a presidential primary and didn't even vote for a president candidate of any party. Isn't that something? Okay? These are how the systems are gamed. In every state it's different. Our job as activists is to figure out where the impunity is. Go ahead.
Well, I'm really discouraged that there are only a few of us here.
I'm not, because we did a bad job advertising this. And even though this video will probably go very wide because I'm known all over the country with activists, it's anybody's fault, it's mine for not getting it taken care of.
But it has been known, actually, that our elections have been stolen.
Yeah.
I mean, both President George W. Bush
Both elections.
both of them were stolen. And this came out, it's not a secret, and yet hardly any American seems to know it. And of those who know it, I mean, why at this democracy conference isn't that a big issue?
It is.
I went to the film the other night about the Wisconsin, the problem there.
Yeah.
And so after the demonstrating collapsed, then they did this recall effort. Well, they should have known that of course they would, you can't rely on that election. That was probably stolen too.
I suspect Milwaukee and I suspect Waukesha, and if you're in Wisconsin, as the joke goes, and it's a bad election, you might have been Waukesha.
Yeah, so I
That's
mean,
a
I
code.
think, is it that Americans can't face the fact that so much attention is given to elections, and yet no attention is given to the fact that we've had major elections stolen again and again, and why is it that we even bother to vote in that circumstance?
And that is a concern that I have.
Yeah.
And that is what we need to hammer with the Democratic Party, because I think that, first off, I am a Democrat. Lastly, a Democrat. I call myself a progressive, a populist, a socialist, and a Democrat last. Okay? But we do have this crazy two-party system, okay, which is controlled by the corporations, okay? I think this is that the Democratic Party, I think, needs to be very scared, because they've always said to me over the years, and I've been in meetings in Washington or Chicago with the DNC on a high level, and they say, we need to get more people to vote. But if people think that their vote is no good and it's not counted right, they won't vote. And you're scaring people away, Breaky. Well, 2016 and 2017 is the years that you turn on the TV and you hear Russians hacked this, Russians did that, or the system was violated. They got a problem. I am fearful that if we don't come up, we're going to be self-suppressing ourselves.
Well, that was my next question. So then, basically, when I always felt that the ability to send in your vote early by mail, absentee ballot, was a way to include more people, but actually that could possibly be a way of suppression.
Yes.
So do you have like a 5-point thing that as citizens we can use to be confident that our systems are
3 points. Transparent, trackable, publicly verified.
Okay.
And then we train people and wake up to the fact that we cannot catch a stolen election like Bill talked about, but you can prevent. And I know I've prevented. This is nothing that we just made up. In 2015, we were having a bond election. And I took my camera, not that nice one there, I had a big one, with the tape, and I went down there and I filmed the whole thing. And then I went back to my house to write a report about what I saw about the DS 850. It was a bond election for $800 million, okay? And I decided, in 2008, I worked with a Republican senator in the state, and we passed a bill that made all the voting equipment under camera. So I turned on my computer, I took my computer, plugged it to my TV, doing my report, and I'm watching a screen, and I'm watching the election department. I thought this son of a bitch is breaking and entering into the computer. And then they went ahead, was changed out the database, it looks like. Then they left, then they brought the election director in. He looked at it and said, oh good, he printed some reports and started doing Louis loops in the chair. In that report, 24 pages, you can pull down the video and watch them do it. What did I do? I went ahead. First off, I said to myself, well, who the hell am I going to call? I'm going to call Bill. I go, well, Bill's going to say, what can he do? You know? So I said, Brakey, jump in your truck. You're 5 minutes away from the election department. Go down there. And so I went down there and I saw Brad Nelson in the backyard. I said, Mr. Nelson, I'd like to talk to you, sir. This guy hates my guts, okay? I want you to know that. I says, can you tell me about the camera? Is it really live? And he says, John, our camera is so live that if a mouse was to run across the floor, we had this happen, it activates the camera. And I said, well, that's really good. And I pulled out my smartphone and I says, good, your guys just broke into the system. And he goes, what? He didn't know that I knew that he was in the room too, you know. So he said, well, you wait here, Brakey. So he goes inside and I'm waiting out there. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, I'm getting steam. He won't let me in the building, you know, and I have the right to go in because somebody's in that election department. And so he comes walking out with his head down. He says, John, you were right. And we're going to have to redo the logic and accuracy test tomorrow morning, okay? And I said, well, you know, since you're being so nice, and let's sit down and talk. And we talked, and he apologized, shook my hand. First time in like 10 years, you know. And then the next morning, they redid it, and then the press came in, and he immediately started lying to the press. Why are you redoing this? Oh, because my guy was incompetent. He forgot. He went into the machine because he forgot to print this report. I had the report at 10:31 the day before, okay? And the guy was there for 10 years. And then he said he knew nothing of it until somebody told him. I got him in the room. He lied. I fear this happens a lot, because they were launching a fraction magic attack. That's what they were doing. They ran the logic and accuracy the day before, just like Mickey Donahoe said, it's working right at this moment. And then they programmed the computer to cheat. Because fraction magic works. You think your vote is a whole vote? It's fractionalized because they have to make it balanced. And that's why we must have elections that are transparent, trackable, and publicly verified. Nothing less.
And how did you get, you said you were arrested 3 times?
About 5 or 6. He represented me on one case. Bill, you want to kind of explain that one quickly?
I just want to interrupt, just because it's 2:20 now. We have all the time. We'll be here, but just in case you guys need to move on to another session, then we'll let you know.
But we can stay if you want, because I don't think somebody's coming in, right?
No.
So we can keep going. Bill, can you explain? I mean, you were my lawyer on that one.
Yeah, I just want to mention something about the computers, little incidental information. In the country of Germany, the Supreme Court ruled computers cannot count ballots because it's unconstitutional. Computers, it's a very, very risky thing with big money and sophisticated people that can know how to cheat with it. So what John's been talking about, and the situation is with using this kind of stuff and with computer counts, here's what you need to do to like the best you can. The answer clearly is paper ballots counted at the precinct with the results posted. That's what we used to do in Arizona. That's what they do country after country around the world. Playing with computers is an invitation to cheating, but that's where we are. And so given that, what's the best outcome with it?
I was arrested at a hand count to verify the election. When the bags came in, the seals and the numbers didn't match. On the election before that, I had a person who works at the election department told me, and I found out this happens in a lot of jurisdictions like Riverside, California, that before they count, they like to count themselves because they don't trust their own equipment. Sometimes I'm wondering if they're cheating or they're just covering up how bad their machines are. And you know, if you look at the Wisconsin report on the hand counts, you'll find error rates, especially on the ES&S, the Eagles, the old M100s, which are the same machine. I want you to know that. I mean, you know, the M100, the Eagle, you know, they just put different stickers. In Maricopa County, they had a real big scandal. They had a 3.8% error rate, and it's in that 24-page report. And so It was so embarrassing that they went out and said, yeah, we got all new equipment. No, they didn't. They just put a sticker on the goddamn machine and loaded Sequoia software on it because it was the same company, okay? ES&S and Sequoia bought their equipment from the same thing. I was arrested because I challenged, and then they said, you know, we don't like what you're doing, you've got to leave, you're causing trouble. I said, I'm sorry, I'm representing two parties. I can't. Well, if you don't leave, you'll be arrested. And I said, well, I guess you're going to have to arrest me. And by the way, after they arrested me, Bill went to court, defended me, and then they had to go ahead and went from a 2% hand count on a precinct to a 4% as a penalty, which was good. It means we could verify more votes. Sadly, vote by mail is the biggest percentage, and I know they're not cheating in the precinct vote because it's too small, it's too easy to get caught. You're going to steal where you have impunity, and that's where you look. You examine the system, and you find out where that impunity is. And it takes time to train, and I would love to train people to do that.
And there is supposed to be a session
Yeah.
here at 2:30 called Lowering the Voting Age. So just let you guys know, sorry.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Not right on topic, but